north and east first thing Wednesday before it turns increasingly cloudy from the west, and that cloud will bring spells of rain by the afternoon into western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Eventually that rain spilling into northwest England and Wales. It's going to turn heavier and more persistent through Wednesday night and Thursday. Risk of localised flooding in western Scotland.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
I'm Andy Hilbert. Good morning with the latest on the roads across the UK. In Leicestershire, the southbound M1 moving a lot better now following that vehicle that needed its tyre changed. Junction 22 at Coville to junction 21A for Leicester North. In West Yorkshire, the northbound M1, lane closure there due to a broken down vehicle at junction 40 for Otterton Wakefield. And in West Yorkshire, the northbound M1 there, we've currently got a lane closed due to a vehicle fire. Junction 45 for Leeds Cross Green to junction 46 for Leeds Carlton. The westbound M20 in Kent, a lane closed on the exit slip road due to emergency repairs at junction 6 for Maidstone. And in Essex, the clockwise M25, the exit slip road is partially blocked due to a broken down vehicle at junction 30 for Lakeside and Purfleet. Also as well, the clockwise M25 in Surrey, queuing at the minute due to an earlier broken down vehicle. Junction 10 for the A3 for the Wisley interchange. It's causing some queues to the Cobham services this morning just before there. You're up to date.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Soya, almond, oats, hazelnut, coconut milk.
Yeah.
It's now much more difficult to choose.
Yeah, there's an awful lot out there on the market. So how do you feel about horse milk? Yes, you heard that right. For generations, people in Central Asia have sworn by horse milk and the supposed health benefits. And now researchers in Poland believe it should even be used in ice cream. For the sweet treat not only tastes delicious, apparently, but could also be good for your gut.
OK, well, joining us now to give us the lowdown on why we should be considering switching over to horse milk is farmer Frank Shellard from Cromwell Farm, Britain's only horse dairy. Good morning, Frank. Look, you're an expert on all things milk. You've even written a book on it. Is horse milk good for you? How does it compare nutritionally, first of all, to cow's milk?
I think the big difference is, just to make the point from the very start, cows, sheep and goats and all those other alternative milks have got 4 stomachs. Horse has got a single stomach, so a lot of the enzymes and a lot of the makeup of the milk is very similar to mother's milk. So our bodies are a lot more able, us being a single stomach animal, if you like, to digest that milk. So that's the big thing. That's the first point I'd like to make. Because of the makeup of the mare's milk, you could drink the lactose and the lactase in it. You could probably, not all, don't quote with everybody, but a big percentage of those people that are lactose intolerant could drink the mare's milk. The great thing about the mare's milk is it's very, very good for your gut flora. If you remember in the history books, Cleopatra bathed in ass's milk, and ass's milk is exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same makeup as mare's milk, and she bathed in it for eternal youth and to keep the skin and her metabolism correct.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Tuesday the 20th of August, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Bev Turner, and Dawn Neeson, standing in for Andrew.
Exactly, in matching red. Now, missing at sea, the search resumes for a missing tech tycoon, Mike Lynch, and 5 others after that super yacht sunk off the Sicilian coast yesterday.
And wind of change. The Prime Minister launches plans to make Britain a green energy superpower as he cracks on with Labour's climate agenda.
And over in America, Biden bids farewell. US President Joe wipes away tears as he hands the baton over to Kamala Harris at the Democratic National Convention.
Huge night for the Democrats last night. Big night for Kamala Harris as well to set out her stall. We'll tell you what their big themes of the evening were. It was all a big loving, wasn't it?
It was some interesting bits, though. A very interesting bit. I thought Biden was very interesting. I'll tell you more about my thoughts on that later.
Don't go anywhere. gbnews.com/your say to let us know your thoughts first of the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you, just after 9:30, and we'll start with a recap of that continuing news that we are covering throughout today, that the search and rescue efforts for 6 people are continuing into its second day now after that super yacht sank off the coast of Sicily. Some breaking lines just coming into us this morning, in fact, that among them is British businessman Mike Lynch, along with, now we understand, Morgan Stanley banking boss Jonathan Bloomer and Clifford Chance lawyer Chris Morvillo. That latest line just coming into us from a few news agencies here in the newsroom. A body believed to be the ship's cook has also been recovered yesterday. 15 people, including the wife of Mike Lynch, were rescued after that vessel capsized yesterday during intense storms. It's understood the businessman Mike Lynch was on the luxury yacht celebrating the end of a long-standing fraud case which he had been acquitted of. Well, earlier we spoke to Matthew Shank from the Maritime Search and Rescue Council, and he suggested that rescuers could still be working to access people inside that vessel.
If they are there, they'll have to use specialist cutting gear and equipment to access it, but they'll also have to do it in a safe way in order to not cause any issues with the divers themselves trying to access it, and also carry out significant damage to the vessel. So they'll have their sort of procedures and way of doing that. It's important to note that there's still a surface search going on as well. However, getting to people inside the vessel may take some time, and the authorities and the emergency services will be working out the most effective way of doing that, but also trying to minimise the damage and the risk to the rescuers.
News in the US, and Joe Biden became emotional as he delivered his farewell speech to the Democratic National Convention last night. The US president wiped away tears as he addressed crowds on the first of 4-day event in Chicago. Kamala Harris will be formally declared as the party's election candidate later this week. Mr. Biden says she is the right choice for America.
Let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
And members of the RMT union are meeting today with the Department of Transport to discuss a new pay offer. Rail workers are hoping they can secure the same deal recently agreed between the government and train drivers to end strikes. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News, live across the UK with me, Bev Turner, and Dawn Neeson, looking a little like, we do apologise, either air stewards or, I don't know, some sort of...
The world's oldest girl band. Come on, say it, Bev. You said that straight away. Not intentional. I think we look great. I think, I'd give us a job on the airline.
This honestly was not deliberate.
Like doors to man. You aren't quite good at that.
Chicken or beef? Right, get in touch this morning, gbnews.com/your say. But, of course, the big story of the morning, the big story that broke yesterday, British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter are amongst 6 tourists still missing after a luxury yacht sank in a tornado off the coast of Sicily yesterday.
It's the most amazing story. The British-registered 56-metre Bayesian had 22 people on board when it went down after being struck by a tornado, waterspout, basically. A body believed to be that of the vessel's cook has been found.
Divers are now combing the waters as the search efforts continue around the wreck. 50 metres underwater. So far, 15 people have been rescued, including the wife of Mike Lynch and a 1-year-old little girl.
That is amazing. The way that mum held that baby up in stormy water is incredible. We're joined now by GB News Home and Security editor Mark White to bring us up to date on the overnight developments. Mark, thank you very much for coming on. It is the most shocking, amazing story. You can't quite believe what happened, and that the mum holding that little baby up is the one that gets me all the time. Can you bring us up to date with what's happened overnight? What do we know?
Well, the search and rescue operation is still termed as a search and rescue operation, has resumed this morning with dive teams going down. Interestingly, those dive teams have been briefing the press in Italy on the progress of their efforts, and some key lines coming out. The yacht itself, Bayesian, is lying some 48 metres down on the seabed. It's lying on its side. Now, the divers say, from what they can see, it's intact. There's no apparent damage to the superstructure of the yacht itself. They have not been able to gain access. They're limited by the fact that their dive times are limited to just 12 minutes. And they've got a minute going up and down the 48 metres, and then only 10 minutes, I should say, on the seabed itself to do anything meaningful. They have established, they found a window on the Bayesian that they believe will be a good access point, but they have to remove that window. And then when they get in, the main passageways are full of debris, floating furniture and the like. And because there are narrow passageways on this vessel, it is actually slow going. They have to make sure they remove all of the objects in the way before they can actually gain full access to the yacht itself. And sadly, and we reported this yesterday, dive teams first on the scene had spotted what they believed were bodies through portholes in the vessel. Now, what they haven't done is quantify how many people are down there. And listen, there's a very slim chance, it is a slim chance, but always a possibility, especially as the vessel seems to be largely intact, that there could be one or two air pockets inside this vessel. It's 185 metres long, so not an insignificant size. But because this incident happened so suddenly at 4 a.m. in the morning when most people would have been asleep, it's probably very unlikely that anybody would have had the presence of mind to find an area on the vessel where they could breathe. But, you know, until there's no hope, they'll continue searching.
Mark, its tech tycoon has been described as the UK's Bill Gates. Mike Lynch, he planned the cruise as a celebration with his family, employees and lawyers who supported him during his decade-long US fraud trial, which he only won in June. And the fact that his teenage daughter is also missing, presumed dead, makes this really a terrible... I mean, obviously it's a tragedy, but beyond tragic.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's an incredible, it's a bizarre story as well, with other links to this story that just make it all the more incredible, almost unbelievable. Mike Lynch, as we know, fought for years in the federal court system in the US to clear his name. No one ever wins, really, against the federal court. Most people take a plea deal. Only 3% of those who ever fight it win. He was among the 3%. Him and a colleague of his called Stephen Chamberlain, and Stephen Chamberlain, we now are told, died at the weekend on Saturday, out running, hit by a vehicle and died of his injuries. This trip to Italy was meant to be a celebration in part of the fact that the legal proceedings are all now behind Mike Lynch, that, you know, they won their case just a couple of months ago, and invited along with Mike Lynch were some senior legal lawyers, and one of those, Chris Morvillo, and his wife are missing as well. There were other lawyers on board that vessel who were rescued, but part of the defence team in this case. It just makes it all the more incredible, and understandably there are already conspiracy theories that are popping up about this is just such a coincidence, it couldn't be a coincidence. But everything we know about the sinking of the vessel tells us it went down in a terrible storm. Everybody saw it. We've got CCTV video from the main port in Palermo showing these huge gusts coming in at the time that this vessel went down.
One of the questions, of course, Mark, will be why this was the only boat that went down. I was listening to the mayor of the area being interviewed this morning, and he said he found that a little bit mysterious. Do we know anything yet about whether the structure of this boat was such that it might have made it more vulnerable to freak weather conditions?
Well, we know it had the second highest mast of any sailing yacht in the world at 75 metres tall. And that brings with it an inherent instability. They mitigate for that by putting weights in the keel of the vessel to ensure that it doesn't tip over. But of course, it's vulnerable to very high winds, especially if it hits the vessel side on. So what skippers do when they encounter a storm is they steer into the storm. And that indeed is what happened with another vessel that was anchored just by this Bayesian yacht in the bay there. The skipper managed to put his engine on and steer the vessel into the winds. So he was safe. But for whatever reason, the Bayesian didn't manoeuvre, it seems, wasn't able to face the storm and was tipped over by the winds.
OK, all right, thank you, Mark. So the rescue mission continues there. We'll bring you any news as we know it.
I have trouble thinking in metres still. I know I'm very old-fashioned, but that is like 250 foot, the mast. So if that goes over and pulls the boat over, got no chance, has it?
Yeah. Right, up next, Joe Biden has bid farewell to his role as the presidency. Of course, he was at the National Democratic Convention. Kamala Harris made an appearance, and the anti-Trump chants drowned out Hillary Clinton. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sarah, welcome to the show. Obviously, you work for a tobacco company, so a little caveat there to slip in. Nevertheless, it's no surprise that the illegal market is growing so much. When you look at the cost of cigarettes in Britain, huge amounts of duty, and oftentimes, of course, criminality always finds its way into the system. Tell us more about your report.
Absolutely. I mean, up to 90% of a packet of cigarettes is tax. And in the last year, there's been 2 tax increases that have equated more to the last 3 years combined. So now, if you're a roll-your-own smoker, a 30-gram pouch of roll-your-own will cost £22.50, but you can buy a counterfeit pack of 50 grams for £3. So there's a massive disparity. A lot of illegal tobacco is imported, but we do also have a problem in the UK with illegal tobacco factories. So in the last month, there's been an illegal tobacco factory in Gateshead, in Bury, busted, producing roll-your-own tobacco. And on the 12th of July this month, West Midlands gang illegal tobacco factory, the gang was found guilty of producing illegal tobacco, and that was more than £5 million lost tax revenue to the government. And actually, all of those people found guilty got a suspended sentence.
And how does that work? They're literally importing container loads of raw tobacco and packaging it up in factories in Britain, and they're using what appears to be British packaging illegally?
Yeah, some of it is branded packaging, so some of it isn't the kind of unbranded packaging we'd see on cigarettes and roll your own now, but it's relatively simple to reproduce, especially RYO. Our own pack swap data now shows that about 50% of the roll your own market is illegal tobacco.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. It's 9:46. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Go
on, go there.
I just caught a glimpse of us on the monitor again. What do we look like? If you're just tuning in, this was not deliberate.
I think we look fabulous, to be honest with you, and the fact that I keep wanting to say doors to manual is neither here nor there, and you want to keep bursting into Spice Girls songs because we look like Old Spice. Come on, let's be honest, the world's oldest girl band.
We look ridiculous, and we apologise to our viewers. If you're listening on the radio, you are going to have to turn on your TV now just to see what it is that we've managed to subliminally coordinate.
Well, we're in tune. But at least you're wearing a white top and I'm wearing a black top underneath.
Thank goodness.
And one of us could take our jackets off, but we tried that and that didn't work out.
No, I've got a T-shirt on, you've got a vest on.
I've got a vest on, which is really... No one needs that. No one needs that this time of day.
Anyway, moving on. 9:46. This is Britain's Newsroom. Earlier this morning, the Democratic National Convention kicked off in Chicago.
Vice President Kamala Harris surprised the crowds with an earlier-than-expected appearance and heaped praise on President Biden and thanked him for his leadership.
To kick us off by celebrating our incredible President Joe Biden, who will be speaking later tonight. Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
Give me strength. A former Secretary of State and 2016 nominee Hillary Clinton then took to the stage.
But not without controversy, as Mrs Clinton had to talk over chants of lock him up as she mocked Donald Trump. And finally, Biden himself wiped away tears before calling Trump a loser and fully endorsing Harris's campaign.
Let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Freedom? Freedom from what? For who? We're joined now by the chairman of the Republican Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Any idea what kind of freedom he's advocating there, Greg?
They never specifically said, you know, unless you want, you know, like abortion up until birth. That's the only freedom they talk about, right? You know, taxpayer funded up until birth. So other than that one, they fail to mention what they're talking about. Yeah. So this whole democracy thing, they've been doing this for over a year. I'm not sure it's going to work. I think last night was kind of the final burial of Biden, and they have to run that fine line. Interesting, they gave him the Monday night slot. You know, Bill Clinton speaking in prime time. Wednesday, Barack Obama speaking in prime time. So those are the valuable slots. Monday night is kind of amateur hour, and I think that's the final slight against Biden.
How do you think he performed, though, Greg? I mean, considering how we have seen him recently stumbling over his words, being confused, not looking like he knew where he was, he looked like he'd been plugged in. He was quite animated.
Yeah, the bar has been lowered. So if he gets through a 40-minute speech, it's, you know, congratulations. But he's shouting. He's very angry. And I think he's really angry about getting kicked to the side of the road by the Democrats. And so, you know, they had to balance that and make it look like we appreciate him. It was kind of sad when Kamala said that, you know, thank you for your service. I mean, it's really embarrassing for Biden. He's been at this for 50 years. He ran for president 3 times. And this is not a good moment for him.
So it was kind of a coup, we understand now, with Pelosi and the Obamas behind the scenes.
Right.
He didn't, of course, announce that he was stepping down. It was kind of done for him with a letter which appeared to be signed by him. Did anybody mention that at the convention, or any of the broadcasters, any of the pundits?
No, you won't hear much about that. And they're doing a good job of repackaging Kamala Harris and trying to distance her. On one hand, say that Biden was great, because it's going to be hard to really segregate the two. But on the other hand, try to repackage it and make her look good. So they'll talk less and less about Biden as the convention proceeds. Again, they put him up there Monday night, get rid of him. He's off to California. He's not even staying for the convention. Not a word from anybody in his family besides his daughter who introduced him. So Hunter's laying low, obviously. He's got some heat coming down on him, too. So, you know, this is not a good moment for the Bidens. So what Kamala Harris and the Democrats have to do is really separate it. And again, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton Nancy Pelosi, all the big hitters that just shot him in the back of the head and kicked him to the side of the road are going to be, coming all out for Kamala.
All I saw from Kamala last night, because I stayed up and watched it, was the fact that she's still doing what she does best, the cheerleading. She may as well turn up with pom-poms.
Yeah.
Yay, vote for us. That's all I'm getting from her. Who do you think is pulling her strings? Is it the Clintons? Is it Obama?
I think surely the Clintons have, and Obama have a great amount of power in the party still. And so they're sort of running it from above. And then the inner circle in Washington that's been really running the government for 3 years, they're really in charge. So it's really important for them to keep Kamala in power because then they stay in power.
We were interviewing a Republican on the show yesterday who isn't a fan of Trump, actually. And she was saying that the problem with Kamala Harris is she brings out the worst in Donald Trump. And by that, she was saying that we can distinguish, and I can certainly distinguish between the man who can be a little bit unpleasant. I understand he's a man in his 70s and sometimes his views might take you a little bit by surprise. He's not always the most diplomatic, let's say. And the trouble is, he sees a mixed-race woman in Kamala Harris and he says things which are deeply uncomfortable at times, and she's bringing out the worst in him. So he concentrates more on her personally rather than his policies.
And you're absolutely right, Bev, and I think it's a big mistake. And I think all of his advisors, including everyone that I've talked to, is giving him the same advice. Stay disciplined, focus on the issues, because on the issues, they're polling basically even right now in general. But on the issues, when people are asked, who do you feel more confident on inflation? It's Trump by 10 points. On the economy, Trump by 9 points. On the border, Trump by 10 or 11 points. So on the issues that Americans care about, they also happen to be the issues that rank 1, 2, and 3, and 4. He's leading by 8 to 10 points on all of them. So I think he's got to stay. If he can talk about the issues, stay disciplined. Can he do it? I don't know. And so we're all crossing our fingers right now.
Have we heard anything from Trump in reaction to the first day of the Congress?
Not yet. Right. But he was critical over the weekend of her economic plan, which even the Washington Post, a very left-leaning paper that's massively supportive of the Democrats, came out criticizing her economic plan. So the honeymoon, the Kamala mania will probably continue this week, but it's probably ending because even the Washington Post came out and CNN criticizing her socialist economic plans. The other interesting thing is what they're highlighting this week, right? The convention's in Chicago, which is a progressive socialist dump of a town right now. It pains me to say that because it's my hometown and I still have a home there. My wife and daughter checked into a hotel 40 miles north to get away from the city this weekend. They're boarding up the shops, and the hotel was completely full. Deer Path Inn in Lake Forest, completely sold out. Even Democrats checking in. So Chicago, Minnesota with Tim Walz, California with all failed states.
Huge problems to solve. Don't go anywhere. We're going to solve your weather now. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Some sunshine around today, but also a number of heavy showers, along with gusty winds, making it feel unseasonably unpleasant. We will see some sun, though, first thing across parts of the Midlands into Wales, the south and southwest. There will also be a lot of cloud around, and there'll be increasingly heavy and frequent showers moving in, especially to the north and the west. And western Scotland prone to longer spells of rain, along with a strengthening wind, 50-mile-per-hour gusts near coasts and hills. So all in all, an unsettled and changeable day towards the northwest. Fewer showers in the southeast, and in the sunshine feeling pleasant enough. The same can't be said for western Scotland as the winds pick up and those showers gang together to form longer spells of wet weather across Argyll, West Highland, into parts of the Central Belt, for example, heading into the evening. Northern Ireland also prone to frequent and heavy downpours, especially across the north and the west. Showers moving through western England and Wales, but fewer downpours through the Midlands, the south and southeast. And a fine end to the day here, it has to be said, with fewer clouds compared with how we start things. Now, Tuesday night and into Wednesday brings further showers into the north and west, but those showers tend to fade away as the night progresses. And we'll see some clear spells developing. A fresh night to come, 11 or 12 Celsius for most, single figures in some sheltered rural parts. But actually some decent sunny spells in the south and east first thing Wednesday before it turns increasingly cloudy from the west, and that cloud will bring spells of rain by the afternoon into western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Eventually that rain spilling into northwest England and Wales. It's going to turn heavier and more persistent through Wednesday night and Thursday. Risk of localised flooding in western Scotland.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello, good morning. I'm Andy Hilbert with the latest across the UK for a Tuesday morning. In West Yorkshire, the northbound M1, there's a lane closed there due to a broken down vehicle, junction 40 for Otterton Wakefield. Currently in West Yorkshire on the northbound M1, there's a lane closed due to a vehicle fire. That's going to affect you from junction 45 for Leeds Cross Green to junction 46 for Leeds Colton. And in Bedfordshire, the northbound M1, the entry slip road partially blocked due to a broken down vehicle at junction 12 for Flitwick. Currently at the moment as well, from what we can see for you in Kent, the London bound M20, a lane closed on the exit slip road due to emergency repairs at junction 6 for Maidstone. And in Berkshire, the M4 westbound, one lane closed due to a broken down car, junction 5 for Langley to junction 6 for Slough and Windsor. And in Berkshire, the M4 westbound, the lane is open on the slip road from Reading Services following a broken down vehicle. Now that's all clear this morning. Across the UK, you're up to date.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British giveaway. It didn't cost much to enter, but of course if you're not in, you can't win. And here I am having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday, the 20th of August, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Dawn Neeson and Beth Turner.
Very good morning, thanks for joining us. The Buckingham Palace has some very special news this morning from Southport. Cameron Walker has more.
Buckingham Palace has just announced that the King is interrupting his holiday at Balmoral and will be travelling here to Southport 3 weeks on from that terrific attack which left 3 young girls dead. He will be continuing to show his support for communities and will be meeting survivors from that Taylor Swift-themed dance class.
More of that coming up. Missing at sea, tech tycoon Mike Lynch still missing and feared dead off the coast of Sicily, along with his 18-year-old daughter Hannah and 5 other passengers, all of whom were there to mark Lynch's acquittal in a 12-year fraud trial.
And Scotland, a wind of change. We're hoping to hear in a little while all about Keir Starmer's plans to make the country much greener, Dawn. Very excited about that.
Good luck with that one. And Scotland's deadly drug problem. Yeah, we have an exclusive report on that one.
And continue to send us your comments about our extraordinary matching outfits this morning, which was not deliberate if you're just tuning in. Some of you have been saying Merry Christmas to you both for wearing our red. That's not entirely on news-related, though, is it?
No, we have a story on that coming up.
Honestly, I'm not kidding. gbnews.com/your site to let us know your thoughts. First, the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the GB Newsroom, 2 minutes past 10, and we will head back to Scotland and Southport for that royal update with Cameron Walker later. But first, the top story of the day. The search and rescue efforts for 6 people are continuing in a second day after a super yacht sank off the coast of Sicily. Among them, we now know, is the British businessman Mike Lynch, along with Morgan Stanley banking boss Jonathan Bloomer and Clifford Chance lawyer Chris Movillo. A body believed to be the ship's cook has also been recovered yesterday. 15 people, including the wife of Mike Lynch, were rescued after that vessel capsized during intense storms yesterday. Well, earlier we spoke to Matthew Shank from the Maritime Search and Rescue Council. He suggested to us that rescuers could still be working to access people inside the vessel.
If they are there, they'll have to use specialist cutting gear and equipment to access it, but also have to do it in a safe way in order to not cause any issues with the divers themselves trying to access it, and also carry out significant damage to the vessel. So they'll have their sort of procedures and way of doing that. It's important to note that there's still a surface search going on as well. However, getting to people inside the vessel may take some time, and the authorities and the emergency services will be working out the most effective way of doing that, but also trying to minimise the damage and the risk to the rescuers.
Well, as I said, it is understood that Mike Lynch was on that luxury yacht celebrating the end of a long-standing fraud case in the US, which he had been acquitted of. In a separate incident, though, Mike Lynch's co-defendant in that trial, Stephen Chamberlain, died at the weekend after being hit by a car in Cambridgeshire. And in just the last few minutes, the 52-year-old's family have released a statement. They've described Chamberlain as a much-loved husband, father, son, brother and a friend in that tribute that's now been issued following his death on Saturday. In the US, Joe Biden became emotional as he delivered a farewell speech to the Democratic National Convention last night. The US president wiped away tears as he addressed crowds on the first of a 4-day event in Chicago. Kamala Harris will be formally declared as the party's election candidate later there this week. Mr. Biden says she is the right choice for America.
Let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Joe Biden there speaking last night. Well, a breaking line from Israel now, and officials there say they have recovered the bodies of 6 more hostages taken by Hamas in the October the 7th attacks. The Israel Defense Forces claims it carried out an overnight operation in southern Gaza to try and rescue as many captives as possible. But as I say, we now know 6 hostages, their bodies have been recovered. Meanwhile, the US, Egypt and Qatar are meeting today to mediate a ceasefire agreement to end the fighting. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says it's a decisive moment. In the US, intelligence officials say Iran was behind a hack on Donald Trump's election campaign. It follows allegations Tehran tried to infiltrate personal email accounts of around a dozen people linked to the former president and Joe Biden. The FBI and other federal agencies say the operation was designed to stoke discord and undermine confidence in democracy. Here, the RMT union is meeting the Department for Transport today to discuss a new pay offer. Bosses say workers expect the same terms as those offered to ASLEF train drivers, which was a 15% 3-year backdated pay rise. Even then, their members working for the LNER are threatening to strike over working agreements.
Police say they are now treating the stabbing in Manchester, which left a woman dead, as a domestic incident. A 17-year-old girl and a man aged 64 are still in hospital with life-threatening injuries following that attack, while a 43-year-old died from her injuries. A 22-year-old man is currently in custody after police were called to an address in Gorton on Sunday night. The number of drug-related deaths in Scotland has increased by 12% in the last year. Figures just released this morning show 1,172 people died, reversing a trend of improvements seen since the peak in 2020. The National Records of Scotland found the country continues to have the highest rate of drug deaths in the whole of Europe. Well, young people suspended from secondary school are reportedly twice as likely to be out of education, university or employment compared to their peers. A new report by Education Policy Institute found that those suspended just once are more likely to experience poor outcomes between the ages of 19 and 24. Government figures show the numbers in England have now reached a record high, with almost 787,000 pupils suspended in the 2022 to 23 academic year. And finally, the last of the 31 Ted Baker stores are expected to close by the end of today after the company behind the fashion chain collapsed back in March. More than 500 jobs are now at risk. The shops closing include locations at Heathrow and Gatwick airports, London's Regent Street in Bath, York and in Portsmouth. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you for another update just after 10:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with me, Bev Turner, and Dawn Neeson this morning. And you've been getting in touch about our outfits.
Well, also, yeah, live this morning with Bev and Dawn, or as Malcolm says, thank you very much, Malcolm, good morning, hope you're having a wonderful day, a pair of Christmas crackers.
Can we just stop with the Christmas thing? It's August. I can't get my head around it.
It'll be here before you know it, and you're not ready, are you?
I don't even know what I'm doing this weekend, never mind in Christmas. Adrian says Dawn and Bev blend in well with the set. Thank you, Adrian, who is a GB News member.
And Maureen, also a member. Good morning, Maureen. Maureen says, I think you both look great. Your colour shows your energy because you're two very forward-thinking women.
Well, I agree with that, Maureen. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Keep your views coming. gbnews.com/your say. So, King Charles is set to travel to Southport this morning to pay his respects to those who were affected by the mass stabbing that took place at the Taylor Swift-themed dance school in late July.
3 children tragically died and a further 10 people were injured following the incident in Merseyside. King Charles will thank emergency staff for their ongoing support in helping the local community. Joining us now is GB News Royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, hi. Right, OK, what's going to go on there today? What are we expecting the King to do?
Morning, Dawn. Well, of course, we're just over 3 weeks on from that horrific attack which you've just described, and Buckingham Palace have confirmed that the King is interrupting his holiday and will be travelling down here to Southport to continue to show his support to communities here. On the day of the attack, the King expressed his shock for the utterly horrific incident and expressed his heartfelt condolences and prayers to the victims and their families. Since then, he's been keeping an incredibly close eye on the situation in Southport and the subsequent riots. In fact, he asked to be given daily updates from various organisations. The Prime Minister he had a phone call with, as well as the National Police Chiefs Council, among others. So later on today, the King is expected to arrive at the Town Hall here in Southport, which is just in front of me, and it's there where he is expected to be meeting survivors from that Taylor Swift-themed dance class and their families, as well as some of the other members of the local community. I can see crash barriers have been set up outside the Town Hall, which suggests to me that he may be wanting to meet ordinary members of the public here, local communities. Of course, that's not been confirmed by Buckingham Palace, but I wouldn't be surprised if that does indeed happen. Following his visits to the Town Hall here, the King is going to be going to the local community fire station here in Southport, where he will be meeting emergency service workers who responded to the initial attack on the 29th of July, but also had to respond to the riot riots which were sparked by that attack. So he's going to be meeting police, fire and ambulance workers, as well as leaders from local faith groups here in Southport. If you remember, there was violent disorder outside of a mosque in Southport, and the King has a long-standing mission, I suppose, even when he was Prince of Wales, to talk about community cohesion and getting different faith leaders and to talk to each other and dialogue between different faiths and to keep the peace, essentially. So I can imagine that's going to be a key theme of today. But why now?
Oh, I think we've lost.
A member of the royal family would come to Southport following that. Are we still here?
Yeah, we lost you for a moment
Still
there, Cameron, but that's okay.
Yep. Sure. I was going to say that, of course, there was rumours that the King or another member of the royal family would be coming to Southport, but of course Buckingham Palace and the King didn't want to put additional stress, additional burden on the police and emergency services, particularly because A, they had to obviously deal with the initial attack itself, but B, the riots as well, and also with the King turning up, I suspect that Buckingham Palace didn't want to inflame any further tensions, which is why now that all of that has calmed down, today is the day that the King has deemed appropriate for him to come and visit the community here in Southport and pay his respects. And of course it just shows his commitment to the cause, essentially, because it was only yesterday that he had his official welcome to Balmoral Castle in Scotland at the start of his summer break, and he is interrupting that summer break to come here to Southport today.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Cameron Walker, for bringing us up to date. And that's King Charles visiting Southport today. Wonder if he'll get to meet the families. Don't know, do we?
Don't know.
Keeping that secret. Right, OK, we're joined now by Editor-in-Chief of Majesty Magazine, Ingrid Seward, who joins us to go through all of this. Ingrid, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Ingrid, obviously it's a very emotional trip the King is making this morning. What do you think he's going to say, how he's going to handle this?
Well, King Charles has had many years' experience in these kind of disasters. Obviously not, they're all different, but he is a very caring person and he is a good listener. So he will ask the right questions. He will listen to what people have to say. And I think they're very encouraged by his warmth and the fact that he is a sort of a tactile person. I mean, he probably took some tips from Princess Diana back in those days when she used to hug people in the crowds. He's far more tactile now as king than he ever was as Prince of Wales. And people find his presence very comforting. As Cameron explained earlier, very succinctly, that the royal family don't rush up to these disasters because they get in the way and they realise that, and they have to wait till the security says, right, you can come. Because years and years, well, in fact, 28 years ago, when there was the Dunblane massacre, the Princess of Wales, Diana, at the time, wanted to go up there, and she was absolutely banned. They said, no, the first person up here has to be the Queen, and she has to wait until we say it's all clear. So even with things like this, there is an official protocol, which I think is quite interesting to know, because in Europe, the royal families there, they'll rush to a disaster thing immediately, but here they're not allowed to because they actually make things more difficult.
Ingrid, and we will be bringing you the visit of King Charles later on today. Ingrid, we want to also ask you about this story that's on the front page of the Mail this morning about the fact that the late Queen Elizabeth thought that Donald Trump was rather rude and may have had an arrangement with Melania. Just tell our audience a little bit about the revelations from this new book.
Well, apparently there's a book being serialised in the Mail, which is quite a light-hearted book by Craig Brown, who's a very good writer. But where he gets his stories from, I'm not sure. I have a little bit of doubt about this. It's possible she said it, but it would have been very, very private. And I don't think she would have said it over lunch to a friend. I think she might have made a little wisecrack later and said, whoops, she might have said, I thought he was very rude because he seemed to be looking over me, but in fact, he's so much taller. It could have been something like that, which I think is probably more likely because the Queen just never, ever, ever says anything. The only time I've ever known her really make any remarks about Tony Blair. She really upset the Queen. And she didn't like Blair because she found him too presidential. But she certainly was very, very private, those remarks, and only discovered years later. So I'm a little doubtful about Trump. But certainly she might have said, well, they have an arrangement. I mean, that's not an unkind thing to say, but I think they all liked Melania. I certainly was told by other members of the royal family that they really liked Melania, and that Trump was exceedingly charming to the Queen because, he respected her so much. So I'm not saying the story is wrong, but I'm saying I have doubts.
Very diplomatic, Ingrid. Thank you so much for joining us, Ingrid Stewart there. And let's face it, the royal family was no stranger to arrangements when it came to marriages.
Yes, exactly. Should we move on, Bev? Shall we? Right. New data has revealed that Scotland has recorded over 1,000 deaths from drug misuse in 2023.
This is according to the National Records of Scotland. It's the second lowest figure since 2017.
The NRS also found that deaths linked to drug misuse were more common today than in 2000.
So joined now by GBNews' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire. Morning, Tony. Just help us to understand these figures a little bit more. Does this mean that the issue with drug deaths is getting worse in Scotland or slightly better?
Well, certainly, empirically, this year's drug death figures were undoubtedly worse than last year's, 121 more than last year, to be precise, which, as we heard in the bulletins there, is around 12%. However, if we look back, then actually this year's figures is the second lowest since the year 2000, and that kind of shows somewhere in the system, there are medical professionals that are getting top of it. Now, this year's figures, a lot of people were waiting quite tentatively for. Last year saw a 21% drop in the number of drug deaths here in Scotland, and that raised questions of whether it was a fluke or something to do with data recording. But sure enough, this year, the figures remain somewhat similar, making this year the second lowest. And to kind of break those figures down a little bit more, while perhaps low for here in Scotland, it's still 2.7 times as many as we see in England and in Northern Ireland, 2.1 times more than in Wales. And of course, men here in Scotland are 2 times more likely to succumb to a drug-related death, or poisoning as the National Records of Scotland puts it, than women. Now, you may also suspect, and you would be right in doing so, that more deprived areas are up to 16 times as likely to see drug deaths than some of your more affluent areas. So in particular, Glasgow and Dundee cities have quite a serious drug problem, whereas, further afield in Aberdeen, or even in some of the more affluent areas in the Central Belt, like East Renfrewshire, they don't have as much of a problem. But this has, of course, led to a real, solid discussion up here in Scotland about how best to deal with it. And later on this morning, I'm going to speak to the Health Secretary, Neil Gray, about the various ways that Scotland is going to try and approach this to make even further inroads after that success last year. And that includes the never-before-done here in the UK safe consumption safe drug consumption facility here in Glasgow, where medical professionals oversee drug use in a safe environment.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Tony Maguire there. Now, still to come, we're going to bring you the latest on the British super yacht that, of course, sunk off the coast of Sicily. The rescue mission continues, possibly fruitlessly, one might imagine, as the hours tick on.
Fingers crossed, miracles happen.
And also our paper review. What is racist today?
Yeah, you might be surprised, but you'll find out soon. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go too far.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Fatima's UK campaign, Children and Young People Matter, because I actually run a campaign, and my ministry today is about looking after children in the care system and improving their life outcomes. For me, I had a difficult start to my childhood, and I will never forget it. I mean, I always say I may have left the care system, but the care system hasn't left me. And I instantly understand the importance of giving our young children and young people the opportunity to also, have good life outcomes. So Fatima's UK campaign is all about that. And it's a summit next year. Eamon, I hope you're going to come.
No, and we've talked about this before, and certainly, I believe in what you're doing. I think it's marvellous what you're doing, and that's why, when you think about children, and children are so close to you, and you look at that horror that happened in Southport yesterday, things like that
exactly.
will really hit home hard.
Well, children are the innocent ones, aren't they, Eamon? And this is what we look at when you think they're the future. We've got to start to put them back at the top. And it's a travesty when we see things like that, Omar, that happen. Children are the ones that are impacted. And, it's, for me, really important to be able to do the best we can and looking after their future. And so hopefully, I'm going to the Pyrenees in September, Eamon. That's my next challenge, the Bay of Biscay from France to Spain and back. And hopefully people can go online, fatimascampaign.com, and give generously to help make a difference to these young people's lives. Because, as I say, children are the future.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 10:23. This is Britain's Newsroom with Dawn Neeson and Bev Turner.
Otherwise known as Butlins, because somebody's just got in touch to say that we are the Redcoats.
Hi, campers. I think we do that quite well. So, we are available for our Redcoat work anywhere you'd like to choose today. We're fine.
Right, Nigel Nelson and Bennett Spencer in the studio, also slightly coordinating fellas with your outfits.
Yeah, they've just been
blue,
us.
yeah.
So you're both turning up in blue. Come on.
Honestly, right. Can we talk about racist buildings, Benedict Spence? How can a building be racist?
Oh, I haven't asked it yet, but I'm sure that many of them are. But I did have an incident in the library the other day where I was sort of browsing the economics section and a disenchanted voice said, "Don't come back here anymore." So maybe that's what it is. Honestly, this is one of those things where, it's a knock-on effect of basically giving power to very stupid people. Wales has got this plan where it seeks to sort of get rid of racism by 2030, and as part of this, it's telling librarians to not host meetings in buildings that could be, construed as having some sort of colonial record. But I don't know, is that going to make somebody feel particularly out of place, a little bit awkward? Who knows? But the fact of the matter is, in a country where we don't build anything, we're now being told that architecture is problematic. So, quite what it is we're going to do to get round that, given that presumably we're not going to be building new houses or libraries or anything to replace these things in a timely enough fashion, it seems like they're going to have to put up with these dastardly racist buildings.
Nigel, I'm just £130,000 project to instruct local librarians in critical whiteness studies and deal with the dominant paradigm of whiteness.
I think the wording is all a bit dodgy.
I don't know if anybody's ever been to Wales.
I don't mind racism training. I think you put that to one side. The idea that a building can be racist because of its history, that's where it gets ridiculous. It's in the same kind of area as tearing down statues of slavers. It's all part of our history, and we should learn from it. So leave everything where it is. Have your racism training in a racist building. I would have thought that would actually, if you talk about the history of the building, that would work quite well.
But this is a Labour project. This is in Wales. This is Labour's obsession with changing the way you think. We will brainwash you. We will make you virtuous, and we will all agree on the same things, and nobody can go outside those lines. This is all part of that same picture. What are you doing to the country, Nigel?
Well, this has been around.
Nigel.
This racism training stuff has been around a long time. I know Tory MPs who went off on these training sessions organised by the House of Commons, and they actually came back and said, actually, that was quite useful. So it's not
a tacit way of saying I may have been racist in the past, and it's just been revealed to me that I'm not. It was quite useful.
Actually, no.
The conclusion.
The serious point was that it's things like how to actually recognise unconscious bias. Something like that. So they actually found it quite useful. Things you might say without thinking that might then upset somebody else. I mean, that part is not a bad thing. The bit about the buildings is just stupid.
I don't think anyone out there, have you ever walked into a building and thought, oh my God, this building is just so racist, I'm going to have... I mean, seriously, no one does that.
In Berlin, quite a lot.
Ordinary people don't think like this.
Well, it's about this idea, isn't it, that we have to be constantly reflecting on our crimes, in inverted commas, of the past and atoning for them, and being white British is becoming something to be ashamed of.
It is.
Ashamed of our past. And we wonder why we've got boys with no self-esteem, young, white, poor boys who don't believe in anything and don't have any confidence, because we're constantly being told...
Yeah.
You represent everything that's bad in the world.
Often this is to the detriment of many of the things in this country that are good, and I know that it's really unpopular amongst a lot of people in this country, but actually Britain is quite a good place to live. Historically, it was a good place to live. Many of the values that we have in our society are the reason why we have such large, varied communities of ethnic minorities who have chosen to move here, because actually it's not a racist hellhole, and it's never really been a racist hellhole in the same way that, say, the deep south of the United States was, and yet people still quite like moving there as well. This whole idea that we have to be sort of constantly on edge, rewriting parts of history, listening to people about these, microaggressions and things. I'm sorry, but actually the average person who's a get-up-and-goer is not really going to be interested in that. It's only going to be the sort of person who is perpetually looking to be offended. I think might look at a building and go, oh, I'm not quite sure about this. Like, actually, most developing countries in the world have also had dreadful problems with racism or genocide or civil wars, and actually they managed to get on just fine. I mean, it would be a bit like going to Rwanda and saying, we need to tear down all of these Hutu huts because of what they did to the Tutsis.
Yeah.
Come on, most countries are not privileged enough to be able to fascinate over these sorts of things.
Nigel, fresh from implying that the entire of Northern Ireland was racist, Keir Starmer is now hitting Wales, lucky Wales. What's he doing down there now?
Having various meetings. Bear in mind, he hasn't been able to go on holiday because of the riots. So,
poor him.
So I think politicians should have holidays, by the way. I think that, but not a prime minister in the middle of a lot of unrest. But yes, I mean, he's touring Wales at the moment, meeting the First Minister down there, looking at the various things that are going on in Wales. Then he'll move across the country, and so he's a kind of nationwide tour, get to know the people.
Is he going to imply they're racist as well, as he has with the Northern Irish?
Well, I mean, anyway, he has certainly implied that the rioters were racist. I mean, fingers crossed, we've now come to the end of that particular chapter, and I think that quite clearly those rioters were racist. There was an awful lot of anti-immigration stuff. I'm not sure, on the other hand, that the anti-racists saying love refugees, migrants welcome here necessarily reflect the British nation either. Most people are probably somewhere in between there.
But this is what he did, because he described all of those first people who caused all that disruption and rioting and did assault police officers as far right. Just everyone's in that lump them in the same thing. He did the same thing yesterday. They're all just racist. Yeah. It's the most pernicious way to dehumanise a group of people who might have genuine, valid grievances and concerns.
Yeah, I think what was really interesting when the Southport incident happened that sparked all of this, actually the people who were sort of shouting at Keir Starmer weren't saying anything about migrants or Islam or anything that might have been put into that box of far right. They were just asking what the Prime Minister was going to do about criminality in this country that is leading to children being stabbed. And he didn't answer their question, and he didn't say anything, actually, at any of his subsequent press conferences. What this tells me is, and, there is a racist element to these riots, no question about it.
Definitely.
But if you choose not to actually address people's underlying concerns that are not racist, and let's be clear here, questions about immigration need not be racist. They can simply be, and are in most cases, ones about things like capacity or integration, which are perfectly justified. If you just ignore all of that and go, well, we're not actually going to address immigration, we're not actually going to increase capacity, or we're not going to fix parts of the economy that might affect these people, we're just going to try and palm all of this off as racist because that's how you'll be able to suppress any dissent.
I mean, the whole thing is
it absolutely
we just had a general election where immigration played a major part in that, with two parties, well, three parties, I suppose, if you count Reform, who had very different ways of dealing with it, and people then voted for the party they thought could deal with it best.
I think, no, they voted for the party that was not the Conservatives, because they had a really bad track. And this is the thing, the Conservatives were talking a tough game on immigration, far tougher than Labour were, but the point is people didn't vote for the Conservatives because the Conservatives have lied every single election about what they plan on doing with immigration. People were not voting for Labour because they thought, oh, actually, I think this approach is better, or I quite fancy more immigration. They just punished the Conservatives because they were useless. That's all that needs to be read into that.
Are you clear now what Labour are going to do to stop particularly illegal migration or asylum seekers, refugees, boats?
Didn't it involve nail bars and car washes?
But partly, yes. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean we're going to stop the boats. I think that we have to be cautious about the idea. Stopping the boats isn't going to happen, at least not for a very long time. So what you do is you've got a backlog of people. So around about 100,000 people. The problem with them is that they can't stay in the country because of the Illegal Migration Act says they're not admissible, but they can't leave it either because there's nowhere to go. So the first stage is to try and clear that backlog. Second stage is to crack down on the smuggling gangs that are bringing people in, using counter-terror laws for that. So once you've got those two things in place, then, if we can do it, negotiate a returns agreement with Europe. If we can do it.
If.
Oh, we didn't have time to talk about Christmas, Bev. Let's do that next time, gentlemen.
Coming up still this morning, though, thanks both. We're going to be joined live from Italy for more updates on the missing yacht.
And more on the Prime Minister visiting Wales to push Britain into becoming an energy powerhouse.
Time, though, for your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. 10:32 exactly, and the top story of the day. The search and rescue efforts for 6 people is continuing into the second day after a super yacht sank off the coast of Sicily. Among them is British businessman Mike Lynch, Morgan Stanley banking boss Jonathan Bloomer and Clifford Chance lawyer Chris Morvillo. A body believed to be the ship's cook has now been recovered from that scene. 15 people, including the wife of Mike Lynch, were rescued after the vessel capsized yesterday during intense storms in the region. Well, meanwhile, the co-defendant of the British businessman Mike Lynch, who is one of those currently missing off of the coast of Italy, has died after being hit by a car. Stephen Chamberlain was killed while out running in Cambridgeshire on Saturday. Both men had recently been acquitted of fraud in the US relating to the sale of Mr. Lynch's software company to Hewlett-Packard for £8.6 billion. Kamala Harris made a surprise appearance at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago overnight. The event happens every 4 years to officially announce the party's nominee for the upcoming election. If she's elected in November, Kamala Harris would make history as the first female US president. She will be formally endorsed later this week and opened proceedings by paying tribute to her outgoing boss.
Kick us off by celebrating our incredible President Joe Biden, who will be speaking later tonight. Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
And one last update for you before we head back to Dawn and Bev. RMT boss Mick Lynch has just arrived at the Department for Transport to discuss a new pay offer with officials. He was asked a few questions.
Well, we're having a meeting. We'll see how we get on.
Hope for the deal?
Mick Lynch there saying he is hopeful for a deal, but just having meetings at this stage. The union boss says workers are expecting the same terms as those offered to ASLEF train drivers, which was a 15% 3-year backdated pay rise. Even then, their members working for LNER are still threatening to strike over working agreements. Those are the latest headlines from the GB Newsroom for now. I'll be back with you at 11 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Some sunshine around today, but also a number of heavy showers, along with gusty winds, making it feel unseasonably unpleasant. We will see some sun, though, first thing across parts of the Midlands into Wales, the south and southwest. There will also be a lot of cloud around, and there'll be increasingly heavy and frequent showers moving in, especially to the north and the west. And western Scotland prone to longer spells of rain, along with a strengthening wind, 50-mile-per-hour gusts near coasts and hills. So all in all, an unsettled and changeable day towards the northwest. Fewer showers in the southeast, and in the sunshine feeling pleasant enough. The same can't be said for western Scotland as the winds pick up and those showers gang together to form longer spells of wet weather across Argyll, West Highland, into parts of the central belt, for example, heading into the evening. Northern Ireland also prone to frequent and heavy downpours, especially across the north and the west. Showers moving through western England and Wales, but fewer downpours through the Midlands, the south and southeast. And a fine end to the day here, it has to be said, with fewer clouds compared with how we start things. Now, Tuesday night and into Wednesday brings further showers into the north and west, but those showers tend to fade away as the night progresses, and we'll see some clear spells developing. A fresh night to come, 11 or 12 Celsius for most, single figures in some sheltered rural parts, but actually some decent sunny spells in the south and east first thing Wednesday before it turns increasingly cloudy from the west, and that cloud will bring spells of rain by the afternoon into western Scotland and Northern Ireland, eventually that rain spilling into northwest England and Wales. It's going to turn heavier and more persistent through Wednesday night and Thursday, risk of localised flooding in western Scotland.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello, good morning. I'm Andy Hilbert with the latest across the UK for a Tuesday morning. In West Yorkshire, the northbound M1, there's a lane closed there due to a broken down vehicle, junction 40 for Otterton Wakefield. Currently in West Yorkshire on the northbound M1, there's a lane closed due to a vehicle fire. That's going to affect you from junction 45 for Leeds Cross Green to junction 46 for Leeds Carlton. And in Bedfordshire, the northbound M1, the entry slip road partially blocked due to a broken down vehicle at junction 12 for Flitwick. Currently at the moment as well, from what we can see for you in Kent, the London bound M20, a lane closed on the exit slip road due to emergency repairs at junction 6 for Maidstone. And in Berkshire, the M4 westbound, one lane closed due to a broken down car, junction 5 for Langley to junction 6 for Slough and Windsor. And in Berkshire, the M4 westbound, the lane is open on the slip road from Reading Services following a broken down vehicle. Now that's all clear this morning. Across the UK, you're up to date.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hello, welcome back. It's 10:38.
Heidi, hi.
Oh, Heidi, hi, campers.
The red coats are here to look after you.
George Manuel. Anything else? Keep coming. We can start singing Merry Christmas. It's also quite festive. But people are saying, actually, mine's more orange red and yours is red. People, thank you very much for the comments, but maybe a bit too much time on your hands there.
Well, let's see what
actually,
you've been home.
The funniest one we've got is that, oh, God, I've forgotten what your name is, sorry. You sent a picture of the Lum Polly advert. James, yeah, look.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, the Lum Polly adverts from the 1980s.
If you're listening on the radio, this is a lot of lovely-looking ladies, and I think one man, my eyes can't quite see over there, all wearing their red jackets and advertising the Lum Polly holiday shop on the days when you used to go into a shop to book a holiday rather than just do it online. Look at that. We'd have fit right in there.
Absolutely. I think we've missed our vocation here. Meanwhile, let me see what... Oh, yeah. Hamish, Bevan Dawn putting the red into the red, white and blue. Beautiful ladies, as always. We love you. You can come back. Thank you.
Right, keep your comments coming this morning. We are all reflecting, of course, on this extraordinary story that broke in our time yesterday. This is about the British tech tycoon. He's called the British Bill Gates. Is how he's been described, a man worth at least £500 million. Mike Lynch and his daughter are amongst 6 tourists missing after the luxury yacht sank in a tornado off the coast of Sicily yesterday.
The British-registered 56-metre Bayesian had 22 people on board when it went down after being struck by a tornado, a water spout, basically. A body believed to be that of the vessel's cook has already been found.
Divers are now combing the waters. The search efforts continue around the wreck. The divers are about 50 metres underwater. So far, 15 people have been rescued, including the wife of Mike Lynch and a 1-year-old girl. Among those on board is British businessman Morgan Stanley banking boss Jonathan Bloomer and Clifford Chance lawyer Chris Morvillo. Now, this, of course, just to remind you, if you've not been watching this too clearly, this was a trip that was described by Mike Lynch as a freedom celebration. He'd been on a almost 15-year legal battle against Hewlett-Packard. He had a company called Autonomy, which was sold to Hewlett-Packard. And Mike Lynch and also a colleague of his were accused of corporate fraud, effectively. The idea that they had overinflated the value of the company Autonomy when they sold it to Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard took them to court. It was said that he had a 0.5% chance of being acquitted of these allegations, and he walked away free 10 weeks ago.
All of this happened in June, and he was under house arrest in America. He was deported from the UK to America last year in handcuffs over this fraud case, and it's incredibly unusual, isn't it, Bev, for someone to be acquitted in a federal case like this. One of the reasons they think that this was the case is that the jurors were so confused by the complexities of the fraud case that was against them. Basically, did Hewlett-Packard overpay for this company, and did Mike Lynch know that he was overcharging, and was it deliberate? That is the bottom line in this case. But the fact that him and his co-defendant have both, well, one is missing, one was killed in a hit and run whilst out jogging on Saturday.
Obviously, it's raising
3 days.
It's raising all sorts of questions and theories as to what might have happened in this situation.
Stephen Chamberlain.
This is Stephen Chamberlain that we're looking at here. He was the co-defendant. You know, so there are certainly questions being asked. It's incredibly unusual for a boat of this magnitude to go under quite so quickly, even in bad weather. The captain of the Bayesian yacht has spoken earlier today, actually, and he was saying that he just didn't see it coming. Speaking from the hospital room, the captain, in a state of grief and shock, he just said, "We didn't see him coming." This is what he's told La Repubblica, an Italian newspaper. Of course, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was asleep in their bunks and in their cabins. By all accounts, some of them managed to realise that the boat was listing, got out onto one of the lifeboats, and then were amazingly rescued by a nearby yacht.
Yeah, they were thrown into the water. I mean, it was the people that were in their cabins asleep, as you would be at 4:35 in the morning. But the most, out of tragedies like this come the most amazing stories. And Charlotte Golonsky, who worked closely with Lynch, she's 38 years old. She rescued her 1-year-old daughter, Sophia, by holding the baby up above her head in the water. And the water was raging at that point. It was a major storm. The waves were smashing into her and the baby. She dropped the baby at one point into the water and scooped her up again. I mean, the strength of that lady, it must have been absolutely horrific for her.
Of course, and also it was pitch black. Ms. Golonsky said, "For 2 seconds, I lost my baby in the sea. Then I immediately hugged her again in the fury of the waves. I held her afloat with all my strength, my arms stretched up to keep her from drowning. It was all dark. In the water, I couldn't keep my eyes open. I screamed for help, but all I could hear around me was the screams of others." Absolute nightmare situation.
And this is what you can see on your screens now. I mean, we keep describing it as a tornado, but obviously if a tornado happens over water, it sucks the water up and becomes a water spout. And as you can see in that picture there, if that hits your boat, and these things happen, like, literally. I mean, you read eyewitnesses and they say 1 minute the boat was there, the next it was gone. If that is going to hit your boat, Bev, you have got absolutely no chance. If you happened to be on deck and were thrown in the water, then you were surviving. But if you were down in your cabin, fast asleep, just absolutely horrific. So thoughts with everybody who is affected by this awful tragedy. And especially, you know, we do hope that, you know, those missing are found. In particular, Mike Lynch's daughter, Hannah, who's 18 and has just completed her A-levels.
Very sad. She's due to go to Oxford University this September.
Incredibly sad.
Right, still to come this morning. Could Britain be the next green superpower? Well, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer certainly thinks so.
Now, this is Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News. We'll see you very soon.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
Have we reached a tipping point in the gender wars? So 6 years ago, comedy writer Graham Linehan, the man who created hit sitcoms such as Father Ted and Black Books, was cancelled for standing up for the rights of women. But have things actually got any better? Well, I'm delighted to say that Graham Linehan joins me now. Just in case anyone's watching who doesn't know what happened to you, what happened?
Well, I just noticed women being bullied online and in you know, physical space as well, and I started objecting to it. I immediately started losing work.
And this was just on Twitter or social media?
Yeah.
Just making that point?
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, I had what I thought was a bit of a kind of safety net in the Father Ted musical, which I saw as my pension.
Yes.
And finally that was taken away too by my spineless colleagues, I'm afraid.
I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? Because, you know, Father Ted, one of the most famous sitcoms of all time, the musical, a surefire hit.
Yep.
Still hasn't been produced.
Yeah.
Still being held hostage by Hattrick Productions, who are the people who have the rights, yeah?
Yeah. It's because it's a combination of things. It's because they're terrified of activists. They have activists within the company, and they don't have enough interest in the women in their lives to investigate the issue.
Are they just afraid that it might happen to them as well?
I don't know. I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of fear. I genuinely don't think they have enough curiosity or empathy with women to actually look into the issue. They seem to think that women's rights, as people like Alistair Campbell often say, are a culture war issue. And, you know, we've seen it reach its apex, really, in that this week, and for 10 days, I think it is, we've seen men hitting women, punching women in the boxing ring.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10:48. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Bev and Dawn.
Now, we would love to hear what you're thinking about, we're talking about today, or if you just want to gossip or comment on our outfits, lots of you have. It's very simple. Just go to gbnews.com/your say and join the conversation. And they are both red. This isn't orange, they're both red. Okay? Just putting that one out there.
Right, so Keir Starmer's agenda is in full swing, haven't we noticed? He's now spending time in Wales, where he hopes to kickstart Britain's role as an energy superpower.
Good luck. Today, the PM continues his busy streak as he plans to visit a wind farm alongside the new First Minister of Wales, Elnad Morgan.
So we're joined now by GB News' political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Right, Olivia, what is he expected to announce today?
Well, really, there isn't much meat on the bones of what he's doing in West Wales. It seems to be a bit of a charm offensive in Wales generally to prove to the public that the relationship between Cardiff and Westminster has been reset. Obviously, when Vaughan Gething and Rishi Sunak were First Minister and Prime Minister, respectively, that wasn't a particularly healthy relationship. The Prime Minister now wants to prove that him and Elnad Morgan can work well together. In terms of what he's actually going to talk about, about. Wales has been investing in onshore wind farms over the past 5 years or so, and we're expecting Keir Starmer to say that Britain can learn from that and do something similar in England. Essentially, look how great Welsh Labour's been. Now we can replicate something like that across the UK. I think the visit actually masks quite a few simmering tensions between Westminster and Cardiff. Namely, Cardiff needs some money. The NHS waiting lists in Wales are even longer than the NHS waiting lists in England. And of course, the closure of 2 major furnaces at Port Talbot has put about between 2,000 and 3,000 jobs at risk. Last week, the Prime Minister announced that there would be some money to help mitigate those job losses, but it is still a big problem for Wales. They really want some cash. Westminster is not keen to give them that cash. Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves has running a very, very tight ship financially because they really, really don't want to raise taxes. So I think this visit is mainly going to be about sort of trying to show that that relationship has been reset and trying to keep the new Welsh First Minister happy under the guise of this conversation about energy. Keir Starmer pushing forward his Great British Energy proposal, that £8.3 billion fund that's set to last for the next 5 years. It'll be interesting to see how this visit goes down in Wales, and also quite interesting to see how this visit goes down in Scotland, because in Scotland, Anna Sanwa, the leader of Scottish Labour, is trying to tell Scottish voters that he, if he were made First Minister, would have the ear of the Prime Minister, unlike the SNP. So that is another reason for this visit. As far as I'm looking at it, it's more about sort of diplomacy, more about politicking than about energy, which is the headline of the visit.
OK, thank you, Olivia. Olivia Otley there in Westminster.
A lovely outfit, Olivia, just saying she got the memo.
She got the wrestling.
we are literally a girl band now.
We really need somebody to coordinate our outfits, don't we? Right.
Well, we are coordinated, Bev, just slightly too much.
Still to come this morning, we're going to have more on the super yacht that sunk yesterday off the coast of Sicily. Keep your thoughts coming into us this morning about everything. Do you think that Sir Keir Starmer is going to turn the UK into a green superpower? My understanding of this is that it's going to take decades.
I don't understand it.
Literally decades.
I do not understand it. It's like, it's the GB superpower, and it's like, we're all going to be involved. It's like it's funded by private money. How is that us when it's funded by private money? It's just, but this is a great message. But keep your messages coming in, by the way, gbnews.com/. This is from Padraig. Good morning. When we're talking about racist buildings, libraries are racist, evidently now. Don't go in one today, folks. But Padraig says there is only one racist building in this country, and that is the Houses of Westminster, racist against the great British public.
Deep. Controversial,
very
thought-provoking.
Yeah.
This is, of course, this extraordinary story about in Wales, people who run libraries being encouraged not to host meetings in buildings that might have a racist past. And what they mean by that is maybe they had money contributed to them hundreds of years ago by somebody that maybe works in slavery.
Slavery. Yeah, just what's racist today, folks? Be careful out there. You never know.
Tenuous. And you know what? The thing is, it does nothing to stop genuine discrimination against people.
It doesn't.
So,
this is Britain's Newsroom, GB News, the Red Channel, the People's Channel. Now it's time for the weather with Alex.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
How's it going? Here's your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Plenty of wet and windy weather pushing into northwestern parts tomorrow, but ahead of that, today is a day of sunshine and showers for many of us. We do still have the remnants of yesterday's front clinging on in the southeast at the moment, but that's clearing away, taking the earlier cloud and rain with it. And behind it then, yes, sunshine and showers for many of us. Across much of England and Wales, the showers will be quite hit and miss, and there'll be plenty of sunny spells. Further north, the showers will be much more frequent, some heavy ones, especially for western Scotland, where we will have some strong winds, gusts of around 40 to 50 miles per hour perhaps. That will add to the fresher feel for many of us, still just about getting into the low to mid-20s towards the southeast of the UK. Plenty more showers to come as we go through this evening. There could be some rumbles of thunder mixed in with them, particularly across western parts of Scotland. Even further east, though, a few showers are going to make their way in, and all the time we need to watch out for those blustery, gusty winds. Also across northern parts of Northern Ireland, some blustery winds here and plenty of showers, but the shower risk does actually decrease the further south we go, particularly towards the southeast. Some western parts of Wales and southwest England may see a few pushing through at times. More showers to come across northern parts as we go overnight. Further south staying largely dry, 1 or 2 showers perhaps, but also some clear skies, and things will settle down a little bit, many of the showers easing through the early hours. And with the winds easing, some clear skies, it's probably going to be a bit of a fresher night than of late for many of us, some places dropping into single figures. And then through tomorrow, a relatively bright start for many of us, a few showers here and there, but it's later on that we are going to see increasing amounts of cloud and some wet and windy weather pushing in across particularly parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. This could lead to some impacts with a bit of flooding and also some travel disruption likely. Staying drier and a bit warmer in the southeast. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours, but time is ticking. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Morning, it's 11 o'clock on Tuesday, the 20th of August, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Dawn Newsome and Beth Turner.
And Buckingham Palace has some very special news from Southport. Cameron Walker tells us more.
The King is interrupting his holiday at Balmoral to come here to Southport to show his support for the communities here. He'll be meeting emergency service workers and survivors of the Taylor Swift-themed dance class.
And the search resumes for missing tech tycoon Mike Lynch and 5 others after their super yacht sunk off the Sicilian coast.
And the Prime Minister launches the plans to make Britain a green energy superpower as he cracks on with Labour's climate agenda.
And shutting up shop, popular fashion chain Ted Baker officially disappears off our high streets as the company goes into administration.
And we would like to point out that neither of our red jackets, matching, not intentionally, are from Ted Baker.
Did you just catch the end of my yawn there when we came back in vision?
Sorry, I'm wearing red to try and keep you awake, and it's not working, obviously, is it?
I'm wide awake. Although, do you know that Dawn Newsome wakes up at 3 o'clock every morning? Have you ever spoken to the GB News viewers about that?
Yeah, well, no, it was. Thank you very much for outing me. It's the colour. It's decide what colour jacket I wear, Bev.
3 o'clock by choice.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, well, I was watching American politics last night.
Well, that's extraordinary.
Interesting.
gbnews.com/your say. Tell us what you think about Dawn. It's the fact she gets up at 3 o'clock every morning. First, though, the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. Just after 11 o'clock and a roundup of the top story today. Divers searching for 6 people still missing at sea after a super yacht sank there claim they're facing significant challenges. Among those unaccounted for is a British businessman, Mike Lynch, and his daughter. We also now know that Morgan Stanley banking boss Jonathan Bloomer and Clifford Chance lawyer Chris Movillo are among those missing. 15 people, including the wife of Mike Lynch, have been rescued after the vessel capsized yesterday during intense storms. It's believed the boat was hit by a tornado. It's understood the businessman was on a luxury yacht celebrating the end of a long-standing fraud case, which he had been acquitted for. Well, earlier we spoke to Matthew Shank from the Maritime Search and Rescue Council. He suggested to us that rescuers could still be working to access people inside the vessel.
If they are there, they'll have to use specialist cutting gear and equipment to access it, but they'll also have to do it in a safe way in order to not cause any issues with the divers themselves trying to access it, and also carry out significant damage to the vessel. So they'll have their sort of procedures and way of doing that. It's important to note that there's still a surface search going on as well. However, getting to people inside the vessel may take some time, and the authorities and the emergency services will be working out the most effective way of doing that, but also trying to minimise the damage and the risk to the rescuers.
We've also heard today that the co-defendant of the British businessman Mike Lynch, who is one of those currently missing off of the coast of Italy, has died after being hit by a car. Stephen Chamberlain was killed while out running in Cambridgeshire on Saturday. And as I said, both men had recently been acquitted of fraud in the US relating to the sale of Mr. Lynch's software company for £8.6 billion. Joe Biden became emotional last night as he delivered his farewell speech to the National Democratic Convention. The US president wiped away tears as he addressed crowds on the first of a 4-day event in Chicago. Kamala Harris will be formally declared as the party's election candidate there later this week, and Mr. Biden says she's the right choice for America.
Let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
And RMT boss Mick Lynch has arrived at the Department for Transport this morning to discuss a new pay offer with officials. He was asked a few questions by reporters when he arrived.
Well, we're having a meeting. We'll see how we get on. Hope for the deal.
Mick Lynch saying there he is hoping for a deal, but at this stage just meeting with officials at the Department for Transport. The union boss also says workers are expecting the same terms as those offered to ASLEF train drivers, which was a 15% three-year backdated pay rise. Even then, their members working for LNER are still threatening a separate strike over working agreements. Some breaking news into us in the last hour or so that Israeli officials say they have now recovered the bodies of 6 more hostages taken by Hamas in the October the 7th attacks. The IDF claims its forces carried out an overnight operation in southern Gaza to try to rescue as many captives as possible. That comes as US, Egypt and Qatar officials are meeting today to mediate a ceasefire agreement to end the fighting in the region. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says it is a decisive moment for the deal. In the US, intelligence officials say Iran was behind a hack on Donald Trump's election campaign. It follows allegations Tehran tried to infiltrate personal email accounts of around a dozen people linked to both the former president and Joe Biden. The FBI and other federal agencies say the operation was designed to stoke discord and undermine confidence in US democracy. Here, police say they're now treating a stabbing in Manchester, which left a woman sadly dead, as a domestic incident. A 17-year-old girl and a man aged 64 are currently in hospital with life-threatening injuries following that attack, while a 43-year-old died of her injuries. A 22-year-old man's now in custody after police were called to an address in Gorton on Sunday night. In Scotland, the number of drug-related deaths has increased by 12% in the last year. Figures just released show 1,172 people died, reversing a trend of improvements that were seen since the peak in 2020. The National Records of Scotland found the country continues to have the highest rate of drug deaths across Europe. Young people suspended from secondary school are twice as likely to be out of education, university or employment compared to their peers. A new report by the Education Policy Institute found those suspended just once are more likely to experience poor outcomes between the ages of 19 and 24. Government figures show the numbers in England have now reached a record high of pupils being suspended each academic year. The final 31 Ted Baker stores are closing today after the company behind the fashion chain collapsed back in March. More than 500 jobs are now at risk, including at locations at Heathrow and Gatwick airports, London's Regent Street, in Bath, York and in Portsmouth. And the King is visiting Southport today to meet some of those affected by the fatal stabbings of 3 girls last month. His Majesty's expected to meet some of the survivors and also thank emergency staff there for their work in the aftermath of the tragedy and the riots which then followed. Our reporter Cameron Walker is in the town for us throughout the rest of the day. We'll be hearing from him later this hour. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome. Hope you're having a wonderful morning out there. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Bev Turner and Dawn Neeson.
So, the front page... Oh, no, we're not doing that now, are we? No, we're going on to talk about Southport. The King is set to travel there this morning to pay respects for those who were affected by the mass stabbing that took place at a Taylor Swift-themed dance school in late July.
3 children tragically died and a further 10 people were injured following the incident in Murdstone. King Charles will thank emergency staff for their ongoing support in helping the local community. Joining us now is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, what are we expecting the King to do when he's there today?
Well, Dawn, in the last half an hour or so, I've actually had the pleasure of speaking to the family of BB King, who said they are incredibly touched that His Majesty the King has chosen to interrupt his holiday and come down here to Southport to show his support for the community here. Of course, it's just over 3 weeks since those horrific events at the Taylor Swift-themed dance class. On the day itself, the King released a statement saying he was shocked by the utterly horrific incident and expressed his heartfelt condolences and prayers and sympathies to those families. And since then, he's been keeping a really close eye on events here. He asked to be given daily updates on both the attack itself, but also the subsequent riots. And today, later on at the town hall, he will be meeting survivors of some of those children and their families who were caught up in that attack on the 29th of July. He will also be meeting some emergency service workers at the local community fire station here, those who responded to the initial attack, police, fire and ambulance, as well as, of course, dealing with the aftermath with the rioting that took place in Southport and indeed across the country in the weeks since. But perhaps also quite important to the King is the chance for him to meet community faith leaders here in Southport. The King has had long-standing work ever since even when he was Prince of Wales, really, trying to integrate communities together, community cohesion, and getting different faiths to talk to one another and keep the peace. And I think there's going to be a key theme here today for His Majesty the King. If you remember, there was violent disorder outside the mosque here in Southport just a couple of days after that attack on the 29th of July. But why now, 3 weeks on? Well, of course, there were rumours that the King or other members of the royal family would be visiting Southport following that attack. The Prince and Princess of Wales also released quite a heartfelt statement talking about how they felt as parents on hearing the news that 3 young girls had tragically lost their lives. But of course, from my understanding, if a member of the royal family turns up, it would place an unnecessary burden, perhaps, or at least stretch police and emergency service resources for a member of the royal family turning up at the time that they're dealing with such a horrific attack, the aftermath of it even, and of course the subsequent riots. So I think that's perhaps why it's taken kind of 3 weeks for His Majesty to turn up. But the fact he is interrupting his holiday at Balmoral to come down here to Southport suggests to me he thinks it's incredibly important that he should be here to show his support to communities. And also in the last hour, Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the King will be meeting the families of those 3 girls killed in London tomorrow.
OK, thank you, Cameron. Lovely day there in Southport this morning. And, of course, a huge impact on the whole community, of course, the events of the last 2 to 3 weeks. Let's speak now to the Chief Executive of the Southport Amusement Park, Norman Wallace. Good morning, Norman.
Good morning.
Good morning. I took a few trips to Southport Amusement Park, myself being from Manchester when I was younger, and a lovely town with just fantastic kind of tourist and normally a very sleepy, uneventful sort of town to go and visit. What's the impact been of events of the last few weeks there?
Well, Southport's a beautiful place. It is a very safe place to live, to work and to visit, but the impact has been absolutely incredible. Because of the recent events, people have become worried about coming and visiting Southport, and that's really not necessary because it's a very safe place to be. But the impact is almost beyond understanding. Unless we get some help from the government, the town is possibly due to complete failure. That's how bad it is.
What do you mean by that, Norman? Just explain that to us.
Social media has created a bit of a frenzy of Southport not being a safe place to visit, but it is a safe place. It's a beautiful place, as you just mentioned. It's got lovely architecture. It's got a lot of things to do, and people need to realise that they are safe to come here. It's a beautiful, safe place to be. This is an isolated incident. It's a terrible thing that's happened, but people should not be concerned about coming to visit Southport.
Norman, how important is the King's visit to you today?
Well, hopefully it proves to people that the area is safe, and for the King to come here now and things, as you just mentioned, relax with the security services, and it will, you know, we're welcoming the King, and we want to welcome all the rest of the population of the UK and anywhere that wants to come and visit us.
When you say the area's safe, Norman, are you talking specifically that you think those fears are related to the initial stabbing at the summer camp, or do you mean the subsequent riots and disruption that happened afterwards?
Both, actually, because sometimes the social media gets the story wrong. Within an hour of it happening, we had people come to our front gate saying that we had to close. There were madmen running around Southport with knives stabbing people, which was obviously not really quite correct. It was an isolated incident. And so the social media causes an unnecessary frenzy of fear, and mostly by people that are not involved, that many of them are not involved in the area. Many of the people that came to the riots, of course, there were some people that were local that got carried away, but most of those people were from outside coming to just cause a nuisance. Now, that's not to say that some things need to change, because perhaps they do, but those people that caused that disturbance were mainly not from the town.
I think it's a complicated issue, and I don't want to lay the blame of everything that happened at the door of social media, because in my opinion, if you want to pick up a brick and throw it at a police officer, you are responsible for those actions. It's not because of something you've read online.
I never said that. I'm talking about the people being in fear to come, and I can say that because immediately as it happened, people were emailing us saying, can they cancel, because they were worried about coming. Muslim people asking if they can they cancel or rearrange. But on the next day, I actually approached a group of people, and I asked them if they were Muslim, and they said yes. I said, obviously you've heard about the incident, and some people are now worried about coming to Southport. And immediately before I'd finished my words, they said, we've come here to Southport because we know it's safe. And that's wonderful that people think such a thing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's the truth.
And it has to be safe for everybody. And also, you need to use social media for good as well, Norman. So
Absolutely. And with the good, the day after the riots happened, I put out on social media that we should all work together and try and help the people on the Sussex Road to repair the walls. And we got a big group of people, local people, to come down, and we cleared everything up. And, it was great to be working with all those people. There were builders, Max Henshaw's builders, and landscape gardeners, and local councillors, and everybody came together to clear that area up. And on the 1st of September, we're doing a fundraiser for the local hospitals and the air ambulance, because they're all local, and without them, there could have been more deaths that day.
OK.
And so we've got to help the community.
Right. I tell you what, Norman, tweet us some pictures of the Southport amusement park, and we will get them all over social media and get people up there on the rides and having a wonderful summer. Thank you so much for joining us, Norman Wallace there.
It's a good positive story, though. That get out there, people. Go and enjoy the amusement park. Actually work and promote Southport as a good, lovely place to go. I've never been, actually, on my to-do list. Right, now, to the main story that broke on our show yesterday. A diver has been found dubbed in the missing search for passengers on the super yacht as very complicated due to the vessel still being intact. That's as another expert has claimed the sinking is unprecedented. British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter are among 6 tourists still missing after that luxury yacht sank in a tornado waterspout off the coast of Sicily yesterday.
So the British registered 56-metre Bayesian had 22 people on board when it went down after being struck by a tornado. The word Bayesian is a mathematical term, actually, and of course,
is it? I was gonna say, is it, mate?
And Mike Lynch his specialism has always been, he studied at Cambridge, maths, algorithms, technology, dubbed the British Bill Gates.
And worth an awful lot of money.
Absolutely.
Celebrating the end of that court case in America.
A body believed to be that of the vessel's chef has been found.
Earlier, GBNews spoke to chairperson of the Maritime Search and Rescue Council, Matthew Schnack.
There's numerous theories at the moment, and obviously there will be investigations carried out by the Marine Accident Investigation Branch from the UK, but also the Italian authorities. But it's important to look at the vessel type in itself. So the vessel is obviously a sailing vessel, which means it has quite a lot of masts and other devices on board the vessel, which are particularly high. As you said, the mast is either the second highest or the highest in the world. When there's wind and weather, this basically acts almost like a sail in itself. So it catches the wind, and that can cause the vessel to heel over, to lean over, and affect the stability of the vessel. But again, it's important to note that as a sailing vessel, they'll be designed to deal with these forces act upon it. But it is important to know that windage area that's provided by the mast is affected when there are strong winds.
Matthew, can you tell us a little bit about your understanding of the conditions in the sea around Palermo in the days before the sinking? Because we're hearing about this water spout, aren't we? Is that something that you would see regularly in the seas in the Mediterranean?
No, I mean, a water spout is pretty rare. They do happen, and they do happen in that area. But again, these aren't weather events that would be predictable. They can be sort of expected in certain areas, but they are rare. Now, the weather forecast on the night was nothing that would have caused any concern to the master, to the captain. There were warnings for thunderstorms, etc., but the proof is sort of in the pudding. If you look at the anchorage, the vessel wasn't the only vessel in the anchorage, and the other vessels in the vicinity weathered quite fine throughout the weather event. We don't know whether it was a water spout or whether it was a squall that's come through, but in any case, looking at the CCTV from the area and the impact that's had on the vessel, it was a pretty significant weather event that impacted on them.
Right, we will be bringing you any further developments on that story. So it broke during yesterday's show, and the story is moving on, and hopefully, well, we don't know, but the bodies, the search for people goes on. But coming up, time to shut up shop for Ted Baker as our stores go into administration. Up next, more of the top stories from our paper reviewers. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We'll see you soon.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales could be back to full duties by the autumn. This would be wonderful news.
Well, I actually don't think she is going to be back to full-time duties by the autumn. I think that's how I read it. But in fact, I think what they were saying, this is a report by the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, is that Catherine is still recovering and she's still having treatment, but she doubts whether she'll be back to full-time duties, but we will be seeing her. So we will be, seeing her at big royal events, and she'll, if she's up to it, she will, appear now and then, but most of her work will be done from home because she's still having the cancer treatment. And as she said way back in the summer, she has good days and she has bad days.
Yeah, and we can all understand that, can't we? But it does make such a difference, doesn't it, to catch glimpses of her and seeing her and William this week congratulating the GB athletes after the success at the Olympics. It really does make all the difference just to see her, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And I think, she wants to get out there, but I don't think she's going to be back at the daily chore of royal duties, visiting hospitals, things like that. I don't think she'd be strong enough to do that. But, I mean, she looks terrific. We know she's had a brutal year, in fact, probably much, much worse than any of us can imagine. And so she's, doing what her doctors are telling her. She's taking it very gently. I'm sure she wants to go full steam ahead, but she is being restrained, as it were.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, that was a bit
No,
mysterious.
that was a bit sort of like three-dimensional.
It's a bit like what the world must look like for you at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, God's sakes.
Nigel Nelson and Benedict Spencer with us in the studio. We're discussing the fact that Dawn Newsom, I think it's amazing. I would love to be able to get up at 3 o'clock every morning and still feel OK.
No, you won't, because Benedict's just told me I'm probably going to go senile in the next half hour. Which
That's just
wasn't
working at
really
GB
helping.
News. But no, it's amazing. What time do you go to bed?
Oh, roundabout. Well, last night it was quite late. It was about 11:30. And, yeah, I'm Margaret Thatcher, and she did get slightly mad.
Yeah, but she did a lot of amazing things before she went mad. So I think it's brilliant, Dawn. I would love to get up at 3 o'clock every morning. I bet the world is wonderful at that time of the day.
It is beautiful, and I do get up, and I'm meant to be working, and I'm taking pictures of sunrise. Yes, I know, which are on social media for you if you really want to bore yourself. And the husband goes, oh, not another picture of sunrise.
This is like the opposite of Mussolini, who used to leave his office light on until about 2 a.m. and then got a servant to turn it off so people would think he was working late. But he actually always got about 9 hours sleep.
Oh, right, OK.
Yeah.
Oh, clever. Yeah, I like that.
So, for a minute, I thought you were going to compare me to...
I was going to say, where are we going with this?
Nigel,
I'm sorry.
Should we talk about Priti Patel saying that Labour are being held hostage by the militant trade unions and taking the fuel allowance from the pensioners? Is she right?
No, because they're separate issues. So, first of all, when it comes to the trade unions that everyone's sort of leaping up and down about at the moment, the clue is in the name, Labour. So Labour was born out of the trade union movement, has always been alongside the trade union movement. On the basis of that, it's no surprise that the trade unions helped to bankroll them. When it comes down to the pensions, I was surprised that Rachel Reeves did what she did. I think that we really do have to get to a point where we look at a reform of the entire pension system. Now, for instance, she needed £1.5 billion really quickly, so she had to tell the pensioners they couldn't have their winter fuel allowance as early as possible, so they weren't expecting their letter in October, which would tell them it was coming. If you rolled this into the pension itself and then taxed it, you would actually hit older pensioners. And then there are other bits there with pensions. It's things like when you get to 66, up to 1 in 3 pensioners are working in some kind of paid work, but they don't pay national insurance. When you get to 60, you don't pay for prescriptions. You get free or discounted travel. And one of the arguments is if you roll that into a proper pension, but you don't give the breaks to those people who are earning money outside.
I'm sorry, I look, the pensioners that are going to lose this, right, are maybe on £11,500 a year. They're the ones at risk of losing this. And meanwhile, you've got... I'm not having to go at train drivers here. It's not, I understand where you're coming from on that. But, the average train driver on £69,000 a year for a 4-day week gets that pay rise from Labour. Meanwhile, it's taken away from... Benedict, make that make sense.
I mean, I'm not going to necessarily come out and bat for the pensioners, seeing as they're getting pensions that my generation probably won't get, and about a third of pensioners in the UK now live in millionaire households. So, yeah, there is, I think, yeah, well, maybe, they can't sell them. They could try. Maybe they could take a little less money on what they're worth, on what is effectively unearned wealth. Ultimately, you can't have this sort of system where absolutely everything is geared up towards pensioners. I know that this isn't going to go down particularly well, and this is going to be the route in which the Conservatives are going to try to get back into power in 5 years' time, because the Labour government is going to try and hammer pensioners a little bit more than the previous government did. And obviously, pensioners tend to vote more than young people, so obviously this is a route back in. But it's not a fair system. It doesn't currently work. On the subject of trade unions, I mean, you're right, actually, to point out that this is kind of part and parcel of what the Labour movement is all about. But a strong government should be able to get into power off the back of donations from interested parties and say, well, thank you very much, but we are assuming that you are donating to us on the basis that you like our broad philosophy, rather than simply you would like to just have a bung when we get into office. And the danger that this government has is that it's untested, it's quite raw, and now it does appear weak to a lot of other unions, especially seeing as the train drivers are getting something, the junior doctors are getting something, and what you're already seeing Border Force officials, for instance, saying they're going to go on strike is lots of other unions are going to turn around and go, well, now it's open season. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Lots of public sector workers have been massively left behind as a result of inflation and wage stagnation in this country. However, you cannot have massive amounts of public money being given to all of these people when inflation is still a problem, and it's going to come back later this year. I'm sorry to break this to everybody. It's going to be tricky. And when growth in this country is anemic, we don't produce enough wealth as it is in this country. And if you decide that you're going to give what little wealth you have to what are increasingly less productive industries, well, that's also not a recipe for growth.
But what you're arguing about there really is how you fund political parties. I mean, you could say the same thing about the Tories, that they're traditionally funded by wealthy people and businesses because these are the people who think they benefit from a Conservative government. So unless
I didn't say that was a bad thing.
Unless the taxpayer picks up the tab for funding political parties, we are going to have this kind of system whereby the rich broadly will go for the Tories, the unions that represent working people will go for Labour.
Well, that's true, but ultimately, unless you have a reform of the system, which isn't going to happen because both parties are terrified about what the prospects of that will be, this is how it's going to be. And what is required then is a strong government to say, OK, thanks, we're not just going to play straight into your interests. Actually, we hope that you gave us money because you like our broad ideological position. I think that the general public would respond very favourably to a government of that colour. I don't think this Labour government is that. I certainly don't think the Tories in their previous or their soon-to-come iterations meet that criteria. And ultimately, this is a conversation about weak government, is people sort of going around with the begging bowl, asking for donations, and then just giving handouts to their mates. That's ultimately what it is, and it's what's degrading a lot of the confidence in politics in this country.
And this is another story that's linked into the Daily Mail story, isn't it? Keir Starmer facing fresh questions about the influence of union barons. 13 of them sit on the NEC, which is the governing body of the Labour Party, basically.
Yes, but again, we come back to...
A third of the NEC is made up of Labour union leaders.
But why is that so surprising?
That's not surprising, but is it right?
Well, I think it is, yes, on the basis that this is what the Labour Party is standing for. So, you know, it used to be the urban working classes going back to the 19th century and the formation of Labour in 1900. We now change that phrase to working people. But that is who Labour went out there to represent and to protect. So the idea that they're working with the unions, it's always been so. Even in Tony Blair's day, although Tony Blair had a lot of trouble with the unions, they still ended up working together.
It just doesn't look... It just doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right.
And you can't... What I would say is, if you're sort of very pro-this, but you are really angry about the Tories taking donations from billionaires, I think that you're a hypocrite. And that's what you will see. But this is politics, isn't it? One set of people will say, oh, those wicked Tories, they're all corrupt, they're taking money from their mates. Oh, but the trade unions, they're very moralistic and they're all very good. That, I'm afraid, is part of the problem, is that people can't see that these are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
This is just how our system works. If you want to change it, fine. But I don't hear people advocating for it to be changed once they get into power on the back of their mates' money.
Can we just have one very, very quick story, because Bev and I have made an effort to be festive this morning. The Christmas decorations already in shops. Good thing, bad thing?
I think it's a dreadful thing. Absolutely. I'm a very old-fashioned traditionalist. There shouldn't be anything before December. In fact, frankly, I'm not even sure that Christmas trees should be going up until Christmas Eve, which is traditionally when they're supposed to go up. All of you people are horrifically wrong. This is sacrilege. I'm just sorry. I'm just taking control of this story.
No,
I'm very angry.
Exactly
We've just
the
been
way that I want to
for looking festive.
You have.
Right, let's go to the very latest news headlines. Sam Francis is waiting for us. Here he is.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom just after 11:30. And the top story today, the captain of a super yacht which sank off the coast of Sicily says he didn't see the accident coming. One body has been recovered and 6 are currently missing, including the yacht's owner, British tech tycoon Mike Lynch, and his 19-year-old daughter. We now know that Morgan Stanley banking boss Jonathan Bloomer and Clifford Chance lawyer Chris Morvillo are among those unaccounted for. Meanwhile, the co-defendant in the US fraud trial of Mike Lynch, one of those who's currently missing off the coast of Italy, has died after being hit by a car in Cambridgeshire. Stephen Chamberlain's family say he'll be deeply missed following the collision at the weekend. Kamala Harris has made a surprise appearance at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago overnight. The event happens every 4 years to officially announce the party's nominee for the upcoming US election. If elected in November, she would make history as the first female president in the United States. Ms. Harris, who will formally be endorsed later this week, opened proceedings by paying tribute to her outgoing boss.
I want to kick us off by celebrating our incredible President, Joe Biden, who will be speaking later tonight. Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
Kamala Harris there speaking last night. Well, just a breaking line to bring you from Israel. Military there say the Air Force has struck Hamas militants operating from a school in Gaza. Hamas, though, denying that any militants were operating out of that building. At least 10 Palestinians are reported to have been killed in that strike. Local officials also saying that a number of families were sheltering in that compound. That strike comes as Israeli officials have also said today they have recovered the bodies of 6 hostages taken by Hamas in the October the 7th attacks. The IDF claims its forces carried out an overnight operation in southern Gaza to try and to rescue as many captives as possible. Here, RMT boss Mick Lynch has arrived at the Department for Transport this morning to discuss a new pay offer with officials. He had little to say.
Well, we're having a meeting. We'll see how we get on. Hope for the deal.
Well, the union boss said that workers expect the same terms as those offered to ASLEF train drivers, which was a 15% 3-year backdated pay rise. Even then, though, their members working for LNER are still threatening a separate strike over working agreements. Scotland's Health Secretary has called a 12% annual rise in drug-related deaths hugely concerning. Figures released show 1,172 people died, reversing a trend of improvement seen since the peak in 2020. And finally, King Charles is meeting survivors today of a stabbing attack in Southport, which left 3 girls dead last month. His Majesty will also speak to emergency services who dealt with the incident, as well as the riots that followed the attack. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in just half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
It's me and Dawn this week. Well, Andrew Pearce is off in his little tiny Speedos, probably just reclining on a beach somewhere.
Yes, and straight after us, thank you, Bev, honestly. Right after us, you've got an extra treat with Patrick and Emily. What's coming up on your show?
Yeah, no, well, we've got loads on. We got the memo, so we just found this lying around the office.
Could have got one that fitted at the very least.
Are we doing it like we're raising money for something? Is it a charity thing?
Listen, you never know when our jobs are going to end, right? Butlins, it's the summer season. We're thinking about putting a stint in at Butlins.
Also, can I just point out, I don't know whose jacket this is. It's a woman's, it's a size 10, and it's cutting the circulation off in both
very nice.
Just don't rip it. Is it either of yours?
No, actually, it's
not as it could be.
It's nice, though.
Designer?
Size 10 Hobbs.
Other brands are available.
Actually, I think I've got that jacket.
Yeah, I think it might be yours, Dawn.
It looks better on Patrick than me, which is slightly worrying.
We should really communicate before we come in to work tomorrow, shouldn't we, on what we're going to wear?
Good luck.
What colour?
It's a good look, Red. It's dashing.
Do you want to tell us what's on the show?
Yes.
Yeah.
How can Keir Starmer say no to Mr Mick Lynch when he's offered up all the other trade unions?
Yeah, Mick Lynch
These massive pay rises. He's stormed in, Mick Lynch has. Do you think he's going to win? Do you think he's going to win?
It's very difficult for them to do anything now other than capitulate every time they make a demand. They're set with a demand, you know.
Yeah. And he's the most militant, he is, Mick Lynch, from what we've seen, from what we've heard. He's going to get what he wants.
He's going to get what he wants.
They're all going to get what they want. That's the problem.
Absolutely. Talking of laughing stocks, David Lammy, is he a national embarrassment? So he's obviously mugged off Donald Trump quite a lot, hasn't he? Donald Trump could well be the next president of the United States. He's also threatened to essentially arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he ever dares to step foot in the UK. And now Benjamin Netanyahu is ignoring him. So we have a foreign secretary who has managed to alienate basically all of the world's powers.
Do you think he should have just kept his mouth shut a little bit earlier on?
You would have thought if you wanted to be in one of the great offices of state, and of course we're going to be focusing on these 2,000 prisoners that are going to be released in just one day. Just one day. Who are they and how have they been chosen?
OK, fantastic. Thank you for coming in and just taking the mickey out of us like
humiliating us.
that.
That's absolutely fine,
right.
yes.
Good.
But we'll get them after
humiliated ourselves more.
Yeah.
In a way.
Patrick and Emily here from midday until 3 o'clock. Up next, though, is it time? It's time to pack up shop for Ted Baker. The company goes into administration. Think they've got any red jackets going spare?
Right, and of course
Don't
we'll
go
bring
anywhere.
you up to date on the latest on the British super yacht. This is GB News. Don't go too far. We'll see you very soon.
Oh, sorry.
It's got Briscoe written all over it.
How's it going? Here's your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Plenty of wet and windy weather pushing into northwestern parts tomorrow, but ahead of that, today is a day of sunshine and showers for many of us. We do still have the remnants of yesterday's front clinging on in the southeast at the moment, but that's clearing away, taking the earlier cloud and rain with it. And behind it then, yes, sunshine and showers for many of us. Across much of England and Wales, the showers will be quite hit and miss, and there'll be plenty of sunny spells. Further north, the showers will be much more frequent, some heavy ones, especially for western Scotland, where we will have some strong winds, gusts of around 40 to 50 miles per hour, perhaps. That will add to the fresher feel for many of us, still just about getting into the low to mid-20s towards the southeast of the UK. Plenty more showers to come as we go through this evening. There could be some rumbles of thunder mixed in with them, particularly across western parts of Scotland. Even further east, though, a few showers are going to make their way in, and all the time we need to watch out for those blustery, gusty winds. Also across northern parts of Northern Ireland, some blustery winds here and plenty of showers, but the shower risk does actually decrease the further south we go, particularly towards the southeast. Some western parts of Wales and southwest England may see a few pushing through at times. More showers to come across northern parts as we go overnight. Further south staying largely dry, 1 or 2 showers perhaps, but also some clear skies, and things will settle down a little bit, many of the showers easing through the early hours. And with the winds easing, some clear skies, it's probably going to be a bit of a fresher night than of late for many of us, some places dropping into single figures. And then through tomorrow, a relatively bright start for many of us, a few showers here and there, but it's later on that we are going to see increasing amounts of cloud and some wet and windy weather pushing in across particularly parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. This could lead to some impacts with a bit of flooding and also some travel disruption likely. Staying drier and a bit warmer in the southeast. Bye-bye.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
43. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Bev Turner and Dawn Neeson.
So high street fashion chain Ted Baker is set to officially disappear as all the shops close after going into administration. The brand was founded by Ray Kelvin more than 36 years ago and became known for selling garments with bold floral patterns originally.
Was it? Oh, it's not my cup of tea, I must admit. But with such a high street powerhouse closing its doors, does this spell the end for the British High Street? GB News reporter Ray Addison is in central London for us. Ray, what's going on with this story?
Hey guys, well first I'd like to apologise for not wearing red. Obviously if Ted Baker had been open I could have popped in there and maybe got one to match you guys. But shoppers here on Regent Street telling me that they're absolutely stunned to hear about the closure of Ted Baker's the Ted Baker remaining outlets across the UK and Ireland. Here on Regent Street is their flagship London store. I was expecting it to be open. It's actually already closed. All that remains behind me is empty shelves. There's a sign on the door from the management thanking people for their custom over all these years. And people here in London have been telling me how they feel about the closure. This is what they said.
Yeah, so that's sad to see, but being the optimist, hopefully something will come in its place. You know, like if we look back across time, Gymshark has opened up down the road, so other businesses will come and open their flagships and the high street will thrive. You know, it's coming up to 10 a.m. and the footfall's already very high.
Yeah, it's sad for the high street, but I think that's what's happening. Everything's being switched online, and so I'm still surprised that there are this many stores on the high street. I think in general, probably retail's heading to mainly online, so I think we'll see a lot of this go, unfortunately, in the future, which is sad because I like shopping at stores rather than online.
I really have never shopped at Ted Baker, ever. But I know a lot of people who do, and especially for workwear and things like that. So I know a few ladies who'd be very disappointed.
It's, you know, and it has been an iconic shop on our streets for, as we said, 36 years.
Yeah.
It's not a good news story, that at all,
It's
actually.
not, no, it's not. And I think I have got a couple of bits and pieces from there, but it's not one of my go-to either. There's just
Maybe it didn't move with the times enough, I don't know. Right, up next, we're going to go live to Italy as the search continues for the missing tech tycoon Mike Lynch and 5 others after the sinking of the super yacht. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Recently, the cartoons that inspired the Bond films have been gifted to the Oscars archive. I'm joined now by John's son, Sean McCluskey. Very good to see you. Welcome to GB News.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have any memory of your dad doing these strip cartoons?
Well, many memories, yeah. We grew up with my father working at a pace. He had to turn in one strip every day, apart from Sundays. So he was always working at the house and always taking reference material. He had models dropping in to shoot them with his camera. You'd go out in the garden and there'd be a guy with a machine gun and he'd be taking photos of him, things like that. Nice memories.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
What would you say about the way he characterised James Bond?
Fleming was very wary that his highbrow art was going to be somehow diminished by turning it into a strip cartoon in a newspaper, but he met with Fleming, and Fleming had a drawing made of what he wanted Bond to look like, and it was very old-fashioned, very sort of military. And my father kind of, you know, jostled a little bit and came through with a much younger, much more lithe character. And through the first few strips, he moved Bond into a contemporary man, very much part of the 60s, and styled him in that way. And I think there's a lot of rumour that Sean Connery got the gig because he looked a lot like the drawings, because it's hard to believe now, but the strip was billboard advertised across the country.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back. It's 11:49 nearly. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Bev Turner and me, Dawn Neeson.
So divers have entered the sunken super yacht as the hunt continues for the missing passengers, with experts calling the operation very complicated.
British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter are among 6 tourists still missing after the luxury yacht sank in a tornado off the coast of Sicily.
So the British-registered 56-metre Bayesian had 22 people on board when it went down after being struck by a tornado in the early hours of yesterday morning. A body believed to be that of the vessel's chef has already been found.
Divers are now combing the waters as the search continues around the wreck 50 metres underwater. So far, 15 people have been rescued, including the wife of Mike Lynch and 1-year-old girl. Among them is British businessman Mike Lynch, Morgan Stanley banking boss Jonathan Bloomer and Clifford Chance lawyer Chris Morvillo.
So we're joined now by journalists from Giornale di Sicilia, Davide Ferrare and Giorgia Manino. Good morning, both of you. Thank you very much for joining us. We've just got Davide here, actually, at the moment.
Because my colleague is on Porticello yet, so I come back here for the to speak with you.
Thank you, Davide. We really appreciate it. What has the impact been of this tragedy, actually, to the people there on the island of Sicily?
Okay, so all the citizens there in Santa Flavia and Porticello, and also the hotel, made themselves available for the 15 survivors, and now they here in Palermo, they are discharging the mom and the baby right now in this minute, and they will meet the other survivors in Porticello in the hotel where they are staying in this moment. So it's it's really hard for the citizen and also for the divers because they have a lot of difficulties because there are many objects and materials floating in the boat at 50 meters. And so the operations now are had a stop, and they're briefing. They are doing a briefing to understand the better strategy to go there and make another dive. So we spoke with a fisherman that tell us about the water spout that are these intense weather events that are really common in this period. In Porticello, they are associated with several thunderstorms, and they are often accompanied by high winds and seas, hail and dangerous lightning, and they were hit suddenly by this storm. So it's now it's like a moment of stop of searching because they're brief. They're making a brief about a new strategy to try to resume these 6 bodies.
Okay. All right, thank you. Davide Ferrara there, one of the journalists from Giornale di Sicilia.
Interesting that he said it's quite a common occurrence, the water spouts in that area.
It's an area of interesting kind of natural phenomenon anyway, because Mount Etna, the volcano, is on the island, and that has been erupting pretty regularly for the last few years. Yeah. Talking of volcanoes, Patrick and Emily are up next, and no doubt it will be a gripping afternoon with them. Good afternoon, Britain. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
See you tomorrow.
It will indeed. RMT boss Mick Lynch storms into the Department for Transport. Will Sir Keir Starmer give in to his fresh pay demands?
Well, he's probably going to have to, isn't he? And David Lammy, is he a national embarrassment after Benjamin Netanyahu refuses to meet him despite this ongoing crisis in the Middle East? A couple of other bits and bobs flying.
Yes, and can a library be racist?
No.
Well, in Wales, apparently they are, and they need to shake things up. We'll get stuck into that as well after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
How's it going? Here's your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Plenty of wet and windy weather pushing into northwestern parts tomorrow, but ahead of that, today is a day of sunshine and showers for many of us. We do still have the remnants of yesterday's front clinging on in the southeast at the moment, but that's clearing away, taking the earlier cloud and rain with it. And behind it then, yes, sunshine and showers for many of us. Across much of England and Wales, the showers will be quite hit and miss, and there'll be plenty of sunny spells. Further north, the showers will be much more frequent, some heavy ones, especially for western Scotland, where we will have some strong winds, gusts of around 40 to 50 miles per hour, perhaps. That will add to the fresher feel for many of us, still just about getting into the low to mid-20s towards the southeast of the UK. Plenty more showers to come as we go through this evening. There could be some rumbles of thunder mixed in with them, particularly across western parts of Scotland. Even further east, though, a few showers are going to make their way in, and all the time we need to watch out for those blustery, gusty winds. Also across northern parts of Northern Ireland, some blustery winds here and plenty of showers, but the shower risk does actually decrease the further south we go, particularly towards the southeast. Some western parts of Wales and southwest England may see a few pushing through at times. More showers to come across northern parts as we go overnight. Further south staying largely dry, one or two showers perhaps, but also some clear skies, and things will settle down a little bit, many of the showers easing through the early hours, and with